Hi, Brittny. Hi, Kelsey. Welcome to the Five Rivers podcast. And I welcome you and I warmly welcome you. And today we're going to talk about nutrition, specifically about type 2 diabetes in America. Right? So you've worked with so many individuals navigating them through health and their metabolic challenges. So before jumping into anything, I wanted to understand like what really inspired you and what is your story that really inspired you to be doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I was kind of thrust into diabetes right out of college. And I was immediately drawn to it because I loved that you could see the changes in someone just from lifestyle changes. And it's just there in the labs and how they feel afterwards. And so it was this really like cause effect thing that was very gratifying to me, and being able to see someone kind of come out on the other end and feel like the healthiest version of themselves, even while living with a chronic condition. So I just always thought that was really cool.
That's great. What about you?
I felt like there's just this lack of solid support and information around nutrition. So I was a competitive athlete in high school, and I always felt like there was such a gap between all of the exercise aspect of what was focused on with our training and competition, and just not support around nutrition. And I think that's so true for all people, not only athletes, but people with chronic conditions as well. So I came down this path and just realized really quickly that people are diagnosed with some sort of chronic condition, and then they're just sent out the door, and no one is there to follow up with them. No one is there to support them along the way. No one is filling that gap besides dietitians between the condition and actually getting better. And so I found that it was just really rewarding to be there for people who otherwise wouldn't have that support. And really, a lot of times, chronic conditions, they need to be managed nutritionally. And it's really cool to see people actually be able to make a change through the foods that they're eating.
That's true because most of the people they feel like a pill, like if they pop a pill and then everything would be sorted, and then they don't have to do all that they really need to do to see some changes. So, what are your thoughts about people just? So, if we talk about, let's say, for example, if we talk about the GLP ones, especially the Ozempic and Manjaro and everything coming in. So, what do you think? Like, are these drugs really making an impact? If, for example, if a person is not really not doing anything, really not making any changes to their habits, and they are just popping those pills and maybe taking those injections, do you feel in the long run how is that sustainable? Like what will be the impact of that without making any changes really to your lifestyle? Kelsey, do you
Yeah,
want to go
I
first?
have it.
Sure, but
Do
you
I'll
you want
want
let
to
to
go
Britt
go
first,
go
Kelsey?
first on this one.
um, I have a mixed relationship about the GLP-1s because I see so many patients on them. I see blood sugar levels improving. I see weight loss. Um, but I think it can also be used as a band-aid, right? It's not fixing the underlying problem. Um, and if we're just covering it up, we're not supporting the person long term. There's a lot of research now that's showing that once you come off a GLP-1, most people are gaining the weight back within 1 year, which I found to be just crazy. I mean, I don't know if people know that when they go on them, but so if you're not planning to be on it long term, you have to have a support system and have to have the foundational information for how to manage this chronic condition from a lifestyle standpoint, or all that weight's coming back and you kind of were just on it for no reason at all. I do think weight loss is hard, and not recognizing that is a disservice to people that are really struggling. It is so, so difficult. And so I can understand wanting to start a medication that can help jumpstart that, help kind of give you the motivation alongside working on healthy eating and learning, how to eat nutrient dense foods. So yeah, I have kind of a mixed relationship about the GLP-1s. I don't know, Kelsey, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think that they have a really strong place in there's a strong case to use them for the people who have tried really hard to do everything else. Like I can think of one particular family member who has tried her entire life to lose weight and has really, really struggled. Like when she was successful, struggled to keep it off. She's done all the habits. The lifestyle was like checking every single box and the weight was not coming off. So in that person, you're like, metabolically, there's something else going on, right? That's not just like, that's not the baseline person. Like something is happening in the system. So I think in that situation, they're extremely useful. And I think that I've seen her success with that medication. And it's really awesome to see her be able to now live her healthy lifestyle and actually have the results and like the health benefits of taking those GLP-1s. I think where we get into some sketchy territory is when people are taking them just to lose that extra 5 to 10 pounds. And like, what's the value in that? You know, what's the risk to benefit ratio? I personally don't know if it's there, because I think that oftentimes there's other tweaks that we could be doing first before going on a pill. Like bottom line, it's not a magic pill. There's still a lot of work that has to go into losing weight and keeping it off when you're on one of those medications.
Yeah. I also don't think we know enough about the long-term effects of these medications, right? Like GLP-1 is a natural hormone. Yes, but it's in response to our body eating. It's not like sitting in our system 24/7 for, years. So that would caution me a little bit as well.
Yes. So I've seen most of my members, like whenever they were like, let's say they are on nutritional guidance, under some nutrition guidance, and they are trying those habits, building small habits at a time. But then if once they are introduced to those drugs, those, let's say for example Ozempic or anything else, right? So they take it as a quick fix rather than like sticking to those habits, and then that momentum is gone and they feel like, okay, the goals that they have been built, so it's like focuses, like it shifts their focus from what they were actually supposed to do, and they're like, okay, I'll take this drug and I'll be good if this will fix me. So what are your thoughts on this, Brittny?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I also just have an issue with just the motivation, like intrinsically too, like just the confidence you get from working hard on something and knowing that you can do hard things, right? And not just like popping a pill. But outside of that, I think we're ignoring the fact that chronic conditions can get worse over time. So if you're relying on something like a pill, you better be prepared to add a bunch more pills, because if you're not addressing the nutritional aspects and how we're going to, support bettering the beta cell function and your body's production of insulin and all these things from a metabolic condition, you're just slapping the Band-Aid on it and hoping that it's going to get better on its own. So yeah, I 100% agree. It's, if you're not doing the things that are going to help the condition itself, it's just going to get worse over time. And then you're going to find yourself on more and more medication to support managing this chronic condition.
Yeah, Brand, it's like new things will come up too if you're not changing the lifestyle, right? If lifestyle is what led to the condition in the first place, let's say it's weight gain or diabetes, whatever it is, if the lifestyle doesn't change, then what's to follow is high blood pressure, heart disease, kidney disease, all of these things. And the medication is not going to prevent the potential metabolic consequences of not living a healthy lifestyle.
100%. Yeah.
I agree with that. And talking about, so let's talk about those variables. So talking about the continuous glucose monitor, the CGMs and the Aura rings and the smart watches, the Apple watches, the Fitbit. So are we relying too much on data? Like what are your thoughts on those variables that are coming in? Especially if you talk about the Apple watches, the smart watches. So it's like kinds of brings that anxiety in some people, and they're like constantly checking, and then they're like, okay, because even that leads to stress somewhere. So what are your thoughts on those variables, and like, are we relying too much on data?
So I think one trap that I see people fall into really often is they do an exercise, like let's say it's a big HIIT workout, right? First of all, the watch is absolutely going to overestimate how many calories you've burned. I've seen people do an hour-long class. They're like, look, I've burned 800 calories in class. I'm like, 100% you have not done that. Like, that is not what's happening here. And then they fall into this mental trap of, okay, now I get extra calories. Like, now I get to eat more. So instead of using it as an awareness tool or just like looking at trends over time, they're using it as like a way to earn more caloric intake. And I think there's so much value in the data that we can gather from these tools. I specifically think about like the estimation of VO2 max, which is a good marker of like metabolic health, cardiovascular health. It's VO2 max is a good marker of cardiovascular health. And resting heart rate, those kinds of factors I think are really interesting to look at trends over time. And then just general movement minutes, right? If you notice, for example, me personally, I notice, okay, every summer I get X amount of minutes of movement, and by December that has pretty much plummeted. And then I kind of work my way back up through the year. And so every year I can kind of notice this trend. And yeah, I can use that as information to try to mitigate it and make sure that I stay more active in these later months in the year. But I think, you know, relying too much on any one individual data point with these tools is not necessarily helping us improve.
Yes. So for the people who have been using the CGMs, right, the continuous glucose monitor, and then they see the fluctuations throughout the day, the pattern, and then they're like, okay, maybe this reading that I see is like there's a difference between the glucometer and the CGM sensor, and they're like, okay, it's not showing me an accurate data, but I still have to look at it because I can see it for 24 hours a day, right? And then even so they are constantly going back, and there is some stress, even if the spike is really not because of any meal, they would constantly question those spikes rather. So what would your advice be for people who are like first timers using CGM for the very first time? Like, what would be your advice for them?
Oh yeah. Okay. I love that. So I would advise them to not focus on an isolated reading, right? So the CGM, the whole purpose of it is we want to identify the patterns that we're seeing. So are you elevated in the morning, first thing in the morning? And that's going to tell us what we can do a little bit differently than if you're high after a meal. Or maybe someone's high, you know, every Thursday at 9 p.m. because they went and had pizza with their buddies, or, you know. So I think for me, it's let's focus on the patterns and not get too caught up in these isolated readings, in order to understand what's going on and where we can intervene. I have so many patients on CGMs. I find them to be incredibly powerful tools to help you learn how different foods are impacting your blood sugar. If it's not going to stress you out, if it's going to stress you out, then we're sending your blood sugar up for a whole other reason, right? So it depends on the person, but I think they're incredible tools for pattern management and being able to see like the full picture as opposed to an isolated blood sugar reading.
All right.
Yeah, Brittany, I think that's such a good point. It's like this for people who really try to strive for perfection with the data readings from a CGM, they're setting themselves up for failure for a number of reasons, whether it's increasing stress or just knowing that like it's blood sugar. On some level, sometimes it's going to do what it's going to do. Like there are factors that are happening in your body that you can't always control. It's not always about the food that you consumed. It's not always about exercise or lack thereof. Sometimes it's your stress. Sometimes it's your sleep. Sometimes it's that you're sick, and ignoring some of those other potential causes and just thinking, oh, I ate this and my blood sugar is high. What did I do wrong? It can be really hard for people mentally to kind of work through that.
That's true. That's so true. So not talking about the variables now, I wanted to make it so I really want to understand these like a bit. So there's like a big curiosity, like why do so many Americans who are eating salads and also like whole grains and healthy foods, why do they still see sugar spikes even with all these healthy foods that are there in Costco and whatnot?
Do you want me to go first this time, Britt?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I don't remember.
I think that there are like I was just mentioning, so many factors that are affecting blood sugar outside of just the foods that we're eating. And there's also a lot of foods in our day-to-day diet that are disguised as healthy foods that are not actually healthy foods. I'm thinking things like granola bars or granola in general, even yogurt. Salad dressing sometimes can be surprisingly high in sugar. So I think sometimes Americans are not well educated on how to evaluate their food choices, and that's where some of this comes from.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think there's kind of piggybacking on what Kelsey said, there's this misconception that food is the only piece when it comes to managing diabetes. One of the most surprising things that sends your blood sugar up is stress. I have seen people, I mean, skyrocket from an A1C of like 7 to 10 over a stressful time in their life. And that's not talked about a lot. Stress management is not something, our cortisol levels are rising and we're just thinking, what's going on? I have no idea why my blood sugars are all of a sudden high. So I think even outside, like if you really are, focusing on really healthy food choices, there can be other factors that are impacting it as well.
That's true. So it's not just food, it's stress and the other things as well. Like maybe the lifestyle was such from the beginning, right? So it's like it's a giant ball kind of thing with all these things. So it's not just one factor. So
Yeah.
there are a few people, let's say there's a couple who both had type 2 diabetes, but then even if they have a similar kind of meal, they would spike different. And they would be like, okay, I had the same meal that you've had. Why do I see a higher spike and you do not? So what is that? So can you explain why there would be that difference in their post meal spikes, even if they've had a similar meal?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think there's a couple different factors that are playing out here. One is just the metabolic differences, right? So you could have more lean muscle mass or, just body composition in general, activity level, so many different factors on stress management. I mean, all the things that kind of at a baseline are impacting our blood sugars. And then the length of time that you've been living with diabetes is also so important. If you've been living with type 2 diabetes for 10 plus years, you may have significantly worse beta cell function. So your body's not producing insulin at the same rate as someone who maybe was just diagnosed and their A1C is much lower and they caught it much sooner. And their body might be better at kind of processing their blood sugar and managing their blood sugar than someone that's been living with diabetes for much longer.
What are your thoughts, Kelsey?
I agree with everything that Britt said. There's just like we're all individuals and not everyone responds to food the same way. Honestly, not everyone responds to food the same way, whether or not you are living with a chronic condition. Like if I eat a meal, Brittany eats a meal, it might affect our energy levels differently. It might affect our digestion differently. Like I may get a stomach ache from eggs where Brittany's just fine. So our gut microbiomes are different. Our hydration levels might be different. There are just... Humans are not simple math equations, and calories, carbs in does not always equal specific weight gain, specific amount of blood sugar spike. It's going to be really individualized.
Yes, that's true. And I've seen like many people, like many of my members who are like to fix their readings, to fix their sugar spikes, they try to go too low on the carb. It's not exactly a keto diet, but then somewhere in between. And they're like basically just kind of not really, it's not really helping them in improving their readings. Like what would your suggestion be on going too low on the carbs just to like improve your sugar spike? Is that sustainable?
I think it's not sustainable for the majority of people. I think people crash and burn on that. Or I think a really common thing that we see happen is, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard this statement. I'm so good all day. Like, I'm so good. And then at night, I'm just so bad. Like, it's just so hard for me. You know, I've eaten only like 50 grams of carbs in the day. And then at night, I'm just binging on carbs. And it's like, yes, yeah, that is like no surprise to us because your body craves carbohydrates when you're not eating enough. And that's because carbohydrates are a requirement for muscle function, for brain function. Like at a minimum, your brain really likes to have 120 grams of carbohydrates a day. So for most people, that's about 30 grams of carbohydrates at their meals and 15 grams of carbohydrates at snacks. And we get pretty close to that, give or take a little bit. So a lot of people do really well on that kind of eating pattern. But when we really start to cut out carbs entirely, not only are we not eating enough carbohydrates, but we're also missing out on so many important other nutrients like our B vitamins, fiber. Like fiber, one of the best places to find fiber is in whole grains. So if we're removing this entire food group from our diet, we're going to miss out on some of these other really important nutrients that are critical in blood sugar management.
That's true. So I have some people who I've worked with some people, and then they have a very, very busy schedule. Like throughout the day, they do not even have some time to even walk, right? And even they have that mindset to work on it, like they're really like in to do whatever it takes to improve their readings, but they just do not have that time to fix in their meals. They cannot meal prep. Even on weekends, maybe there is something going on. So what would your advice be for people like those, like who have a very, very busy schedule? Like how do they plan their meals in that way, and how, what would really help them in seeing some improvement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's true for so many people. As far as activity level goes, I think we are so sedentary right now, right? Like we're working virtually, we're sitting at a desk. I do too all day long. Our body does not want to sit. It's not good for us at all. Little bouts of movement. There's research showing that you don't need to go on a 30-minute walk, although that is obviously the better choice, but just breaking up sedentary time. So there was research that came out, gosh, I don't know how long ago that I read that showed that there can be a significant improvement in your blood sugar levels by just setting a timer every 20, 30 minutes and getting up and walking around for 5 minutes. So it doesn't have to be this aggressive plan that feels unrealistic for most people right now. It's just these kind of micro moments where we can just add in a little bit of movement or make a smarter choice. So taking 5 extra minutes to chop up some vegetables on a Sunday. I love the idea of, for me, when I'm cooking protein, for whatever, for me, that's like the hardest thing, right? You have to prep it, you have to grill it, or it's just harder for me to make that. I make a much larger portion whenever I'm cooking. So if I'm grilling out, I'm making protein for lunch for the week. I'm making it for dinner tonight. So I don't have to do that every single night. And I have plenty of food to last me for the week. So it's kind of taking the opportunity when you have it to make the most of it, if that makes sense.
Yes. So we talked about the protein preparation, right? And we talked about how you like, prep it in such a way so that it's not like just staying rotting in the kitchen, and then it's easier for them to just like assemble the meals and then quickly have those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what about, what would your advice be on, like let's say breakfast? Because most of them just take out this Greek yogurt, throw in some berries there, and add in some few nuts and other berries, and then they're like, okay, this is a healthier version of breakfast, and then they see a spike, and that adds up to their lunch and dinner spikes as well. So what would your suggestion be as a quick breakfast options for people?
I love the egg avocado toast combination. I think it's super easy. It's really well balanced. There's fiber and fat in avocado. With a slice of whole grain toast, you are also getting some more fiber, and the carb content of that's super moderate. And then eggs are just going to pack in the protein. So that can provide a really good balance. And you're not skipping out on any single nutrient when you can combine all of those foods together.
That's an
Yeah.
easy thing. Like it would hardly take 10 minutes or 15 minutes of their time, and then they'll be good to have their meal.
Yeah. Britt makes these really good looking like power bowls though. Britt, tell us about your power bowls.
Oh yeah, I'm on the Powerball thing right now. It does take a little bit more time. I mean, it's definitely not like the grab and go option, but I love like a little cottage cheese, some eggs. I do a little bit of chicken sausage, and then I'll throw and kind of heat up any veggies that I have left over from dinner the night before. and then throw some avocado and hot sauce on top. And it is just like really hits the spot and really keeps you satisfied up until lunchtime. So it's that protein, those healthy fats, the fiber, and it's so good. Yeah.
So we've been seeing the videos that you share over YouTube, and we were just seeing those recipes that you create, like especially for the lunch, wherein you just have to assemble those meals, and that was really, really impressive. Like that was really easy, and then that would pack all the like that would have every like each macros, and then the person would be like really like that would be a really filling meal for them, and would help them stabilize those post meal spikes as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think people overcomplicate it. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be this, prepared thing. You can find simple things in your fridge if you kind of put the forethought in before grocery shopping that makes it easy and simple. It's just kind of being able to put those pieces together. So it doesn't have to be this gourmet meal or like these crazy recipes. I mean, I don't have time for that. I know Kelsey doesn't have time for that. We have kids. That's not happening. So we try to make it realistic that, anyone can do it.
So can you guys give us those three simple ways to reduce those post meal spikes without giving up on your favorite foods?
One thing I always look to is, let me start again. So often when we are thinking about nutrition, people think about what do I need to remove? And I think it's really important that we flip that script. So instead of thinking about what we need to remove, let's think about what can we add to this. So maybe that means slightly reducing the portion size of something. Maybe it's that in the past you would have had 2 slices of bread with a sandwich and a piece of fruit on the side. And instead it could be about, okay, can I do an open face sandwich today and I'll still have my fruit on the side, but I'm also going to add a big bed of greens on top of this sandwich to get in more fiber, more nutrients. And I'm going to double up on my protein, throwing like a whole can of tuna fish on a sandwich, or adding in an egg, or adding in some nuts or seeds, something that's going to add some healthy fat and protein together. So focusing on what can we add, and then also movement. If you find that your blood sugar is going up after meals, making sure that you get in movement right after can help signal your body, okay, we just took in nutrients and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are designed to help our muscles work, so let's go work them. And then your body's going to inherently take that sugar out of the bloodstream and use it for the function that it's intended, which is muscle contraction and moving our bodies.
That's good. That's really helpful. Right. So
Yeah.
you guys have worked with a lot of clients before, and you must have seen those habits. Like what do the successful ones have? What habits do they have, and that really helps them in seeing those results as compared to other people who are not really like there is some inconsistencies in like building up on those habits. But what habits do the successful ones have?
That's a great question. From what I've seen, and it's going to go back to activity, people that are moving their body more are having better outcomes as far as blood sugar management goes. It's just simple. Our bodies are made to move. Just like Kelsey said, we're utilizing that carbohydrate, that glucose in our blood sugar to fuel that activity. It also helps. I think this is a fascinating fact that if you exercise today, you have blood sugar improvement for 48 hours after. So it doesn't even have to be every day. It could be every other day. I find that to be incredible. So the people that I find that are the most successful have found a way to routinely move their bodies. And there's a book I love called, Kelsey, what is it? Why can't I think of it? Oh, the Habits one.
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. If you have not read that book, go read it. It is fantastic. But Atomic Habits, it's just about micro moments, right? It's how are we building a habit over time? So many people go in, right? New Year's coming up. They're going, all right, I'm joining the gym. I'm going 5 days a week. If you have not worked out at all in your life and you are setting a goal to work out 5 days a week, I promise you are setting yourself up for failure. Your goal should be something like, I'm going to walk to the mailbox and back tomorrow. I'm going to walk 10 minutes today and slowly build on that, because it's the consistency that makes the habit, not setting this kind of crazy, insane goal and setting yourself up for failure. So that would be my 2 cents on what makes the most impact.
So consistency is the key.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
One thing while we're on Atomic Habits, one thing that James Clear talks about that I think is so fantastic and I repeat all the time is we do not rise to the level of our goals. We are going to fall to the level of our systems. So we had just talked about what if we don't have enough time to prepare food and exercise? Well, if we set a goal that is spending all this time exercising and we don't have a system in place to get us there, we're not just going to magically achieve that goal because it's there. We have to have the system. So maybe the system is after work, I turn on my speaker and I dance for 5 minutes. Great. Okay. It might not seem like a lot, but if you do that every single day, you're making time for movement, and then your system is in place for how to do that. So the goal is a little bit easier to achieve. The other thing that I see a lot that helps people to be successful is focusing on mindset and really giving themselves the space to make mistakes. When we see people who are stuck in this all or nothing thinking trap of it's 5 days a week at the gym or I have failed and I might as well just go to bed now, that's not helpful. So if we can find that middle ground of like, okay, I've set this goal, and even within a goal, the goal can be to only meet that 80% of the time. You can have a plan B. So setting like a plan A goal and a plan B goal to help you have that kind of fallback can really help you to break out of that all or nothing thinking. And that can just help move people forward, because I just said it earlier too, if we're striving for perfection, we're setting ourselves up for failure. So finding that kind of middle ground of I'm making progress, and any progress is good progress. Any movement is good movement. Any change is good change, and we can celebrate that. Then it makes it, you start to get into this place of action, and then motivation kind of comes behind that. So you're like, oh, look, I'm doing it. Now I'm feeling more and more motivated to keep doing it.
That's so true, because if they do not have the ability to go to the gym, or like have those equipments, even like building on those neat exercises or non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, like as you
Yeah.
mentioned, like dancing in the bathroom or maybe just walking their dog, right? Even that makes a difference. So if our listeners pick one habit to start tomorrow, what would you advise them to, which would need move the needle the fastest?
Do you want to go, Britt? I think we're going to say the same thing. Move more, sit less.
Yeah, just what I said before. Just move your body. Yeah, find a way to do it. Do something you love that gets you excited. Put a podcast on, put your favorite song on, like Kelsey said, do a little dance. Like that, I see that move the needle the most. Yeah.
Okay.
It can be helpful too. I know, Brittany, you've talked about you've talked about this in the past of like setting up some sort of positive reinforcement. Maybe it's not only do you put on your favorite podcast when you exercise, but you actually only allow yourself to listen to that podcast when you exercise. And you're like, oh, I'm so excited to go out and go for my walk because I get to listen to my podcast. And suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I get to exercise. Like, I have never said that before, but here I am, like, excited to go out there because there's this other thing that's kind of motivating me to do it.
Yeah, 100%. I always say mine is I have 4 kids, and the only time I get to exercise is in the morning. And although it's hard to get out of bed, sometimes I think about the moment where I'm just like alone in my car, just music all the way up on the way to the gym. And it sounds like such a silly thing, but it's just this little pocket of time that I get to myself that just keeps me going. Yeah.
Yes. So what about those, so as you mentioned that you have 4 kids, right? What about those busy moms who are really not able to, like, maybe they have some work outside, and then they are very limited time to do those meal preps, as Whitney mentioned that, okay, let's like make the protein portion more and then work around those, like assemble those meals in such a way. Like what would your advice be for the busy moms who have to prepare maybe different meals for different kids? Maybe kid A wants Greek yogurt, maybe kid B wants something like peanut butter jelly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my parenting style is like you get what's served. So I'm not making meals for 4 kids. I would just lose it. So for my family, we really are just like, this is what's for dinner. You can eat what you like, but that's what's being served. But Kelsey and I are both busy moms. We're both working, and we're both what I was saying is Kelsey and I are both busy moms. We're both working, we're both managing families, and all of the things that moms are doing, that I will say, like the unseen things that moms just the hats, right? The thousands of hats that moms wear. And so I think with our videos, what we try to show is just simple ways to eat healthy, right? So we're not doing anything fancy most of the time. We're just kind of showing simple ways to eat healthy, food choices to make. And I think a lot of it is just setting aside a moment for yourself to prepare for the week. I know that's what works for me. If I don't have my groceries that I need, that's really difficult. So I think setting that time, and then having a backup plan too. Kelsey mentioned this. There are times when I have to go through fast food, and I have to, rely on convenience foods, and that's what it is. And I've accepted it, and I try to make the healthiest choice when we have to rely on those sorts of things.
Having a backup plan.
Oh, yeah, as Kelsey said, so having that backup plan. So when you do have to rely on convenience foods or running to fast food, which I definitely do as a dietitian, just knowing what plan is going to work for you. What are the choices that you're going to make that are going to kind of help you stay on track, and then not guilting yourself, right? Like, give yourself some grace. If today was bad, tomorrow's a new day. I think that's where Kelsey had kind of mentioned this before, is we guilt ourselves so much, and we're like, oh, I failed at that, so let's just throw that out. And the reality is that most people that are successful at eating healthy and living a healthy lifestyle take the failure and just run with it. They just get back up on the horse and they keep going. And it's just, we know that that's part of it. That's part of maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes people need to hear the validation that you think it's hard, because it's hard. It is hard to feed an entire family. It is hard to be the one planning all the meals and doing all the grocery shopping and doing all the food prep and being the person who is providing the nutrition for everyone. And sometimes just by giving ourselves that little bit of space to say, like, this is difficult, can allow us to move through it a little bit easier, because we've kind of named that feeling, we've named that emotion, which helps us just to kind of see it as it is, what it is, and understand, like, okay, when I feel like I'm struggling, it's okay. Like, it's okay to feel like I'm struggling through this. And, like Brittany was saying, I'm also a big fan of we eat what is served. My kid's only 14 months old, and he eats what is served. Yeah, I'll cut up some extra fruit for him on the side, and he does, like, he eats anything. And I don't know if it's just the temperament of my child, like, it's possible, but I do think that our approach to feeding the family can have a really big impact. Like, if we set boundaries and expectations very clearly, people know what to expect. And this goes for feeding your family. This also goes for kind of a tangent here, but like showing up at a family event. So often when we show up at a family event, people expect a certain behavior of us. And maybe it's that they expect us to eat a full meal of what they're serving. And maybe that's not what you want to do. So setting your own boundaries and being really clear in, I am going to eat how I'm going to eat, and I'm not going to let you dictate how much food I eat or, any part of my own behavior. Like, obviously you show up and you're polite and you eat what's served, but you don't have to overeat because someone is trying to serve you seconds. Like, you don't have to change your own needs to please someone else. Yeah. So I think some of those, it's just going back to some of those mindset things of like, how am I going to approach this situation? How am I going to give myself grace when it gets hard? And then having your own systems in place that work. For me, I have to grocery shop every week. First of all, I cannot buy enough food each week to fit in the refrigerator to feed us all. Like, there's only 3 of us. My gosh, I can't imagine, Brittany, what it feels like for you. Some days you're like Costco twice a week, I bet. But just preparing ahead of time, making sure that you know what you need for the week. And then having those backup plans. Like, I always have a frozen pizza in the freezer. I always have some sort of frozen meal that I know is tasty, fairly healthy. I can put some veggies on the side. Like, it's not the end of the world to eat like that once or even twice a week, as long as you're thinking about what are the healthiest choices that I can make around those times.
Yeah.
So some people, they do have those jobs wherein they are always on the run, like maybe like all throughout the traveling, most days, like like 25 days a month maybe, and then they're like, I have to eat at certain places and I have to eat like as my client demands, like if maybe if there's a business meeting or something. So what would your advice be for someone like who's always on the run, or who's always like preferring having restaurant meals rather than home cooked meals or like healthier options? Like what would your suggestion be for a person who's always on the run?
There, I think, do your research as much as you can ahead of time. So sometimes choosing an option outside of the stress of the situation can help you to choose a healthy option. If you can review a menu ahead of time, you can see what are the things that most closely fit my dietary needs. Or are there any simple substitutions that I can make to help this? For example, if the only thing on the menu is sandwiches that are served with French fries, but they also have salads, like, can I ask for that swap? So looking at swaps, looking at portion sizes of a meal, that's a really big one when dining out, is the portion size. So I know a lot of people have talked about putting half in a to-go box beforehand, or kind of making a mental note of like, this is how much of this I would typically eat at home, using your hands as a portion size guide, like using your fist as using your fist as a size for carbohydrates. If you put that next to the portion of pasta on your plate, you're like, oh boy, that's like 5 fists worth of pasta. That's an indication that that's going to be too large of a portion size. Britt, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I agree with everything Kelsey said. I think eating out, it's really the portion sizes that are usually the culprit. And then also thinking you're making a healthy choice when it's not. Sometimes salads out are the worst option because of all the add-ons and the dressing. So I agree. Take half of it to go. Even after that to go container, right when your meal comes, get 2 meals out of it. I mean, times are hard. It is expensive out there. So I would say that's get 2 meals out of the one. And then fast food, I love telling people get a kids meal. Kids meals are a great portion right now, for maybe even a little bit too big for kids, but they're perfect for adults. So you kind of get a little bit of everything without skyrocketing your blood sugar. So I love that.
So whenever a person wants to like shed some weight, or maybe like wants to look good for a wedding, or maybe wants to like control their readings, and they're like on a salad diet mostly, and then they're doing it for like the entire day, and then they would like step on the scale, or maybe they would check those readings, and the readings wouldn't be that good, which, so that is also depending on the kind of things that is added to the salads. What would your advice be for someone who's like opting for salads? Like, what should they look for? Maybe the dressings, like what would you advise them to have instead if they're preparing, or even if they're having their meals, the salads outside?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with salads, a lot of times it's the dressing, the cheese, the portions of those things. Don't be scared to ask for those on the side. Say, I would like the cheese and the dressing on the side. And then you have a little bit more control over kind of drenching that high calorie dressing all over it. And then also looking for things like this one surprises people all the time, but avocados are great. They're a great source of healthy fats for your brain. They're loaded with fiber, but my God, they are full of calories. So if your salad is topped with an entire avocado, that is just, that's a high calorie meal. So I think just paying attention to the portions, even with salads, if you can take half of it to go, asking for the grilled chicken instead of the fried chicken, those simple swaps can really help. Kelsey, do you have anything to add on that one?
Just kind of going along with the avocado, that just because a food is healthy doesn't mean that it's just because a food is healthy doesn't mean that it's not high in calories. So avocado is one example of that, but so are nuts and seeds and cheese. Like, I'm from Vermont. I love cheese. I eat cheese all the time, but the portion is really important. So having just a little bit as a topper, and not having that be the whole, what's like really adding protein to your salad, can be really beneficial. And there was one other one. Dried fruit is another one. So dried fruit is often found on salads, and it can be a great way to add some good flavor and a little bit of nutrients and fiber. But the portion is really important because it can add up carbs really, really fast.
Yeah.
Right. And what about what is that one thing that when you both started practicing, like what is that one myth or one thing that you learned while practicing and that really blew your mind? Like that's the simplest thing to do. Like anyone can do it to improve their health. Like that was really surprising for you. What is that one thing which you find that is really, really helpful for people to control their spikes?
I guess I'll share something that I learned a little bit more recently, and I'm almost like a little afraid to admit that I didn't know this previously, but it's the order in which you eat food actually does matter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like probably if I had thought about it more closely, I would have come to this conclusion, but thinking that having protein first and having fiber first before eating the carbohydrates helps with that slowed down digestion and absorption of those carbohydrates, and that can make a really big impact for people.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that and say we talk a lot about never eating carbohydrates by themselves.
Yeah.
So adding that protein, adding that healthy fat, pairing it with some fiber, it's not about taking away carbohydrates and villainizing them. It's really just about how can we improve the nutritional composition of this meal. So yeah, I think that's great. And I also think just knowing what carbohydrates are too. So many people, they come out of the doctor's office, no one has given them any idea, right? They still think carbs are just bread. They don't realize that it's also beans and legumes, and that potatoes are a carb, or that, fruits, milk, yogurt, so that's just knowing is, I think, important.
Right.
Yeah, we just had this question the other day, Britt, of like, you always talk about carbs. What about sugar? It's like, well,
Yeah.
sugar is a carb, and
Yeah.
it all fits into the same category. And fiber is a type of carb. Like that is structurally a carbohydrate. So I think going back to like, we can't fear them, right? Carbs are not to be removed or feared or altogether avoided, but just having that knowledge of what type of carb it is. Is it a simple carbohydrate, a complex carbohydrate? What am I pairing it with? All of that makes a really big difference when it comes to blood sugar management.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say it's almost Christmas, right? So maybe some people are going to go like eat outside, maybe just order food in, maybe just prepare something for the feast, right? So what do you feel are the biggest like American food traps that you see, like wherein let's say you're going to a restaurant or maybe a cafe outside. So what do you see it's like really like a food trap?
Do you want to go first, Britt? Do you want me to go?
You can go.
I think it's when we go out to eat, we're not just eating one meal like we would at home, right? We're not just like serving one dinner plate and only eating that. There is an appetizer, and there's a beverage, and there's the entree, and there's maybe a dessert, and there's maybe bread, and there are just so many more components of a meal dining out in a lot of situations than we would typically eat at home. So just being really clear about what things do you love the most? Are you like, I don't really care that much about spinach artichoke dip, but my goodness, I love myself a chocolate cake. Like pick the things that you love, pick the things that you're most excited about, and decide what you can pass on or what you can maybe have a little bit smaller portion of to kind of trade off and have a larger portion of a food that you're really excited about.
Yeah. I'll add on to that. We just talked about this over Thanksgiving is we find people skipping meals a lot over the holidays, right? Like, oh, I have a girls' night tonight, or I have a family dinner tonight. So I'm just going to save up all day. And so I can just kind of go crazy. And that is the worst thing you can do, especially for blood sugar management. So not to say you can't be conscious, like certainly having maybe like smaller meals throughout the day, but skipping meals altogether, huge no for blood sugar management. Your liver's going to kick in. It's going to give you some sugar, I promise. And then also eating before you go, having a little snack so that you're not ravenously hungry. I think that's really helpful in setting yourself up for success. A little bit of protein, a little bit of carbohydrate an hour before you go helps you make healthier choices for sure.
Right. I think all these tips and tricks are really helpful, and then they are very easy to like incorporate into the routine, and that really makes a huge impact. Like as you said, like even walking and doing some physical activity, and it shows up for the next 48 hours, right? So it's like, even if you're consistent with something, even if it is just alternate days, it really helps the person to like really work on to more stabilize those readings really well, right?
Yeah.
So I also wanted to ask you, like, sleep is a topic which is less talked about when it comes to the spikes, specifically the fasting readings that we see on a higher side if the sleep is not good. Like the person has been doing everything, like making sure that they have a protein savory breakfast, and then making sure that the lunch and dinner meal is also good, and they are doing the physical activity and everything, but then the sleep is not good, and as you mentioned, that leads to a low RHR rate as well, and that kinds of increases their fasting readings the next morning as well. So what are your thoughts about the sleep perspective? Like how can we, the sleep and nutrition, like what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, so like nutrition to help you sleep?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like I used to know the answer to this, and now I'm drawing a blank. I love sleepy time tea personally. I think it's just nice to have a relaxing routine at night that helps you kind of calm down. I think it depends on what's causing the sleep issue. For a lot of people, it's like struggling to turn your brain off. So, like outside of nutrition, I mean, there are things like they say a banana can help. I wouldn't recommend that probably for someone with living with diabetes. Um, but trying to shut your brain down a little bit. So staying away from the device, reading a book. Um, it's the screens, I think, that can be a big culprit for that one. As far as nutrition goes, I don't know of like exact foods um, that help with sleep other than a banana. I've always heard, but I don't even know the science behind that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know about the science behind the banana either, but
Chamomile tea.
I will,
Yeah.
yeah, chamomile tea. Foods that are
Yeah.
high in magnesium can really help with
Yes.
sleep.
Hmm.
I think in general, like having nutrient deficiencies can disrupt your sleep because it's so many vitamins and minerals are involved in our energy metabolism and our hormone production. So if you're not getting adequate nutrition, you might have some sort of nutrient deficiency, whether it's clinical and you could actually test it on a lab and get a out of range result, or sometimes even subclinical deficiencies.
Yeah.
I know personally I seem to sleep better when I take magnesium and vitamin D. So, I mean, maybe it's because I live above the latitude where, like, we don't actually synthesize vitamin D in the winter in Vermont. It's, like, kind of tragic. So,
Yeah.
I found, like, I have to supplement. But I think that there are kind of looking at, are there any things that I'm maybe missing in my diet? Or are there a reason why I might have too low of a certain nutrient? And also, not eating too much in the evening can help your blood sugar for a number of reasons, but going to bed on a full stomach, like our body has two modes. We are in, one of them is being rest and digest. And if we're doing too much digestion, our body can't do enough resting. So
Yeah.
I think people forget that digestion is like an active process that your body is engaging in, and it's hard for your body to really shut down in other ways when you're trying to digest a big meal. And that can be really difficult for people too.
Right, right. So, thank you so much for answering all my questions. Like the insights that I get from you both, it will really help all our members and all everyone who's hearing this, right? But let's try like trying to make it lighter for us. So it's to end this session more like a rapid fire round for us, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
lightning round, and we have to answer it in a sentence, in one sentence, one or two sentences. Brittany, you want to go first? Coffee or tea?
Tea. I think coffee some people notice a spike with the caffeine and kind of the cortisol rise from coffee. So unsweetened tea would be my answer there.
What about you,
One
Kelsey?
sentence. I'm sorry.
What about you,
Um,
Kelsey?
Yeah, when it comes to blood sugar management, I think unsweetened tea or an herbal tea is probably the better choice.
GLP-1 or CGM?
CGM all day long.
I agree, CGM.
Protein shakes or eggs?
Eggs. I
Eggs.
would so much rather eat than drink my calories,
No
personally.
brainer. Yeah, no brainer there. Yeah.
Brown rice or quinoa?
Quinoa, I would say, a little bit more protein.
I would agree with that. Although my husband thinks it tastes like sand, so I can't really serve it in my
Yeah.
house. I don't have that one.
But I
love it.
Yeah.
Late dinner or low carb dinner?
Low carb.
Low carb.
Okay. Oat milk latte or black coffee?
Sad, but the black coffee is going to be better for your blood sugar. Yeah.
I think it is not sad. Black coffee is far superior. Oat milk is like, I don't know.
Oh,
I don't really
love
get the
it.
oat milk thing.
Mango or banana?
I would say they're equal, but I'd go for the mango.
I prefer banana, but I'm kind of allergic to mango. They make my mouth feel weird.
Oh, well, there we go.
All right. Thank you so much for answering all these questions for me, and like thank you so much for joining in with us today. So to wrap up things, do you want to give our listeners 3 advices that they want to like that they can implement tomorrow morning itself?
Yeah.
Do you want to start, Britt?
I can start. Yeah. 3 things. I would say pick the smallest thing that you can do to start moving your body and just do it. Starting is the hardest part. Just find something that you love and just start. Make a micro goal and just go for it. I'll kick it to you, Kelsey. 3 from each of us? Or?
Yeah, do you want us to each say 3 or should we go back and forth?
Anyway that you prefer.
Okay. I think one thing that's really powerful is checking your blood sugar before and after meals, and you can really start to see how specific foods affect your body because it's going to be different for everyone.
And then the last one I would say is, oh gosh, I don't know. There's so many. It's so hard to pick. With the holidays coming up, also give yourself some grace. Perfection is not the goal. It's just progress. So any inch in the right direction is a win. And it's not going to be always forward momentum. There are going to be moments that pull you back, and just be aware of that and give yourself some grace.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing about that. I saw someone mentioning this yesterday. The goal doesn't always have to be forward progress. The goal can be maintenance. If your A1C is 9 in October, keeping it 9 until January can be progress. If in the past you've had a really hard time managing your blood sugar over the holidays or had weight gain, like maintenance can be success, and it shows that you're still focused on your health goals.
Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. Even if it like goes down from 6.8 to 6.5, or that's progress right there.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. No progress is too small.
Thank you so much for your time, Brittny.